On speaker?
No, I don't, but we are live.
Hey.
Hey, hi everyone. How's it all going? Welcome to our AMA about the homeschool. What we're going to do is just kick off talking about where the Happy Startup School is from, for those of you who don't know who we are or just haven't been following us for very long. Unfortunately, Lawrence isn't with me in the studio because he has a poorly son. Say hello, Lawrence.
Hello, Lawrence. Hello, everyone. Yeah, sorry I can't be there. I'm not too far away, but yeah, like Carlos said, I've been dragged into family duties. But yeah, we'll be able to answer your questions remotely. This is the beauty of the web.
Yes. No, it's a wonderful thing, the internet. You can be wherever you want, whatever you're doing, and still look like you're trying to be professional. But anyway, without further ado, this is a 30-minute webinar that we're going to do for you. It's really a chance for you to get to know us a bit more, ask us some questions, get us to basically give you some feedback and hopefully some useful answers, and also for us to explain a bit more about where we come from and what the homeschool is. So in terms of the Happy Startup School, we are here to really help people kind of build more purpose-driven businesses, not be focused on the unicorns of the world where they think they need to build a billion-dollar company, but really thinking about what is it they can build in terms of a business or a way of living that isn't just focused on the money, but also really in tune with who they are and what they want out of life. What are their own measures of success? And thinking less about the traditional measures of what success is and related to material wealth and material goods, but more about actually what are the more meaningful things, the things that are sort of maybe less tangible, but actually more meaningful and really stay with us longer. And for us, it's about connections, doing things that have meaning. And when we talk about meaning, it's like experiences, learning, meeting new people. Those are the kind of things that I think really get us enthused and out of bed every morning. One of the reasons why we started our agency, Spook Studio, was we wanted to do things a bit differently, and this was way back when. Is it 11 years now, Lawrence?
Yeah, about that.
It's like
maybe 12.
Maybe 12 years ago now. But we wanted to basically build a business or a sort of lifestyle business, as some people call it, but a job that we enjoyed going into every day, and we felt that we were actually sort of making our own decisions, doing things the way we thought things should be done, rather than having a man on high telling us to do stuff without that seemed meaningless or purposeless to us. Put the purposeless back in there.
Easy for you to say.
Easy for me to say. So over that journey and over that time, through building Spook Studio as a business, and over time working with many more and more startups and entrepreneurs, we sort of identified the wrong reasons for why people were going into business. And what I'll do is I'll hand over to Lawrence here to maybe talk a bit more about that journey from an agency to a movement.
So yeah, hi everyone. So yeah, as Carlos said, really, we've been on this journey, well, together as founders of a company or companies for more than 10 years, but on the journey for building the startup school over the last 3 years. And that has really been an evolution of an idea which started out from a bit of frustration, like Carlos said, with the status quo of business and startups. If you read the tech press or follow the media, a lot of the talk is around sort of high growth companies focused on an exit. But actually what we see is there's a massive movement of people who want to do business differently and actually challenge that status quo. And so when we started out the startup school, really it was partly frustration, but also seeing that there was a better way to approach business, but also a way that can create a whole holistic approach to business and life and not actually separate ourselves from that. So yeah, I mean, the transition we made was from an agency where we were building products for people, digital products, so websites and platforms, to today where we've grown this global community of purpose-driven people, entrepreneurs and change makers who actually want to do things differently and connect with others who are doing the same. And I think that's part of this new paradigm shift we've seen, is away from seeing everyone else's competition to actually these are potential collaborators, co-founders, contributors to my venture, and we can all help each other together if we if we work together. And so the community we built is really people who all have the same sort of ethos about how they want to do business, but the types of businesses they run, maybe the countries they run them in, the way they operate is different, but the way they do business is very similar. And that's what we've seen, and it's been really rewarding from the work we've done, is seeing that whether people are from, you know, any part of the world, the way they come to business, the way they come together is all very similar. And that's what's created this lovely community that we've built. Homeschool is a part of that, but also we run events, retreats, and do lots of smaller get-togethers in our space in the UK. So yeah, today is really to give you a bit of an insight into how we do what we do, why we do it, and also then answer some of your questions about the things that you find that we see a lot, which are challenges that everyone faces when they're starting out, whether that's at the idea stage, even pre-idea if they're not sure which idea to work on, and often when people are then getting going, how you then tackle some of the issues which everyone faces, such as finding co-founders, getting customers, getting funding, all those nitty-gritty things which we obviously think are important too.
Cool. So do you want to give we talk a bit briefly about the kinds of things that we do. So one of the things that we'll be talking about today is homeschool. Another thing that we do in terms of trying to connect people and get people together is our, as you called it, Lawrence, our annual general meeting of Happy Startup Loonies. But we have a summer camp every year in September that we host here in beautiful Sussex in the south of England, and where we get up to 100, 120 people on a farm, listening to inspirational talks, having some really cool experiences, learning new sort of skills even. We've had bushcraft skills, kayaking, going on sort of walks early in the morning to see the sunrise. Last one we did, there's a sunrise service run by our good friends Unknown Epic, and some of you've seen some really amazing magical photos from that experience. But ultimately it's a way of connecting on a more kind of personal level, and it's one of those things, until you've done it, it's really hard to describe the feeling you get of connection and inspiration as well, motivation to get your own thing done. But related to that is our events that we do abroad. Maybe you want to talk a bit more about, you know, the trips we do abroad, Lawrence.
Yeah, so we're doing an event in India in a couple of weeks' time, which is our next retreat. We did one in the Alps last year, which was a similar event with a smaller group of people. I think all the things we try and do, all the experiences we try and create, whether it's offline or online, are really to help people connect, like Carlos said, but also to let their guard down. And I think that's one of the things that works really well at summer camp and the retreats we run is, you know, we put on some fun stuff and some activities which might seem on the surface to be a bit fluffy and pointless, but actually those are the things that help people to really connect and to give them a chance to share stories and really get to know other people and build friendships. I think that's one of the key things, is building friendships with like-minded people who are also on this journey of trying to do something positive in the world and trying to make their lives a bit better too. And that can be challenging because you can be a crazy on your own and you can be surrounded by, you know, good wishing friends and family, but who don't always understand what it takes to really step out and do something different. Whereas when you come together with people at the same stage who are facing similar challenges in an inspirational venue or an inspirational country, or, you know, with a different location, then that really helps people to build those friendships and to share those stories and hopefully get the help they need to connect and push forward. And that's always challenging. I think that's one of the reasons homeschool works, is because it's a community of people. We provide the content and the resources, but ultimately, you know, a lot of the peer-to-peer mentoring is where the real value lies, and the way that people self-organize into groups outside of homeschool to then help each other and be accountable beyond the homeschool, not just over the 4 weeks itself. So yeah, it's really just about building community and building experiences, and those are the things which I think have got us to where we are today. Awesome.
So should we move into questions, Lawrence?
Yeah, let's go for it.
Cool. So what we'll do, we've got quite a few questions to crack through, so we'll try and see if we can answer as many as we can. But we'll start off with a few sort of kind of random ones, for want of a better word. We've tried to group these into some kind of structure so that we can answer similar questions together. These two, I think, they didn't really fit into certain categories, but anyway, we'll have a go. So Peter, I assume this is the way I can pronounce your name. He is asking, what are the fundamentals of joint decision making? So I assume you're referring to the fact that myself and Lawrence are partners in a business and how we make decisions. So do you want to take that one first, Lawrence?
No, you take it first.
Oh, no one on the side on this one.
So let's check our decision-making spreadsheet, shall we? It's a really good question. I mean, there's actually a book. I was chatting to the writer of a book called Decision Making for Dummies. So there's a dummies guide on how to make decisions if you're really struggling. So that would be a good place to start. But it's a really interesting topic because, you know, even if you're just a sole founder, you know, knowing what you base decisions on can be challenging. If you're, you know, co-founding with 2 or 3 people, then decisions take longer. There's no doubt about it. Decisions take longer, but often you might find you get to the best decision. So I think one of the things that we think is really important is to understand what values are driving the decisions you're making. It's one of the things we talk about in homeschool. One of the exercises we get people to work on is to really understand, you know, what are the values, what are the things that are really important to you, you know, what are your beliefs as an individual and as a company, and are those aligned? So if you're in partnership with someone, making sure that you understand what are your drivers for making decisions, because then the decisions themselves should become easier once you have some building blocks to base those on. So if it was a product, we know when we were building websites for people, we would have some design principles, and really they are really values, but in a product sense, they're principles which guide the decisions. So what you can do there is really try and break down what are the things that are important to you before you set out on that journey, whether it's a project or a business, and then refer back to those every time you have to make a decision, to have that check to say, okay, are we still aligned to those things that we agreed right at the beginning? So values are an obvious one for me. But if you want to...
I think that values is, I think that whole thing in terms of having some kind of basis to benchmark whether what you're going to do is a good thing or a bad thing. Ultimately, within an organization, whether there's just 2 of you, 4 of you, or more, it's trust. And what you don't want to do is, particularly in this day and age where we need to be fast moving and getting things done, you don't want to be having to do decisions by committee every single time. So at some level, you need to give people some trust to make the right decision, because they know what's good for the group and what's good for the team. But also, you know, there's responsibility. You know, each person has a responsibility around a particular area of what you're doing, and you just trust that they'll get on and make the right decisions based on, you know, where we're trying to take the group or the business, or however you're organized, whether it's just a partnership or maybe a large company.
Yeah, I think added to that is ownership. I think, like you said, really just making sure that everyone's clear, and we're working through this as a team at the moment. You know, what are the projects within the business, and who owns which project, and who needs to support each other throughout those projects. And then that way, like you said, the trust comes in, because whoever's leading those has the autonomy to make those decisions, but as long as they seek advice and get help where they need it. So I think that's the key thing, is making sure you get all the information to hand, and then maybe it's a gut reaction, maybe it's data driven, depends on the personality, but ultimately trying to make sure you've made the right reason for the right decision for the right reason. Yeah,
it's having those fundamental guiding principles. There's a book called Good Strategy, Bad Strategy, and it's the standard business book about how to basically run a successful organization. But ultimately, he talks about the 3 fundamentals is you got to have good guiding principles, really. And that's one of the bases, because then you'll know what right actions to take. And you got a framework to basically test whether you're going in the right direction. Yeah, and one thing I'd probably say is early on, if you're at the very early stage, a lot of the decisions you make will be, you know, gut driven. They'll be very focused on what feels right. You know, what, given the fact I need to move quickly, how can I make this decision without having to seek evidence or data, because chances are you won't have much data to go on. Maybe as you start to grow the business and scale, or you have much more data to base decisions on, and those will be the guiding points, aligned to your values too, obviously, not just focused it on the data and money, but, you know, what's important to you too. So yeah, I think particularly early on, most entrepreneurs rely on their gut, you know, and they can't explain why they made a decision. But if you've got a co-founder, then that's even more challenging. So just to bear that in mind too. Yeah. There's an interesting side with that as well, is like being able to trust your gut. A lot of the people don't really know how to trust that feeling within them. And that usually comes, the ability to trust your gut comes from experience and just doing stuff and just repeatedly making mistakes, hopefully not catastrophic ones, but just making decisions. And over time, I think you'll get a feeling for, much more better intuition as to what's good or bad for what you're going to do.
Mm-hmm.
All right, next question is from Ruth. Any ideas on how to promote side projects, but without diluting your original business? Sounds a bit exciting.
We've got experience of this. I would say we've got the silver bullet, but we've got the experience of this. I'd be interested to know if it was, if it's her main business that she's talking about, or if it's, in partnership with someone else or working for someone else. But it sounds like she's got one idea for a new business on the side of her existing business.
Yeah, I think that, and it's one of these things I've heard as conversations as well within larger companies, they want to behave like a startup. They want to spin up this startup idea, but they don't want the risk of the brand and the image of the original business. And yeah, ultimately you want to, it's a lot of guesswork really, unless you really know what your idea is. You've got a good idea that this business or this new venture is going to be a success. You're probably in pure startup mode, which is trying to work out who does this idea really resonate with. And so what we did, rather than start up with, this is a money-making business, or this is a money-making scheme, and this is how the business is going to work, is we just tried to build a community, trying to get to know people and what drove them.
Yeah.
You want to speak more on that, Lawrence?
Well, one thing that comes to mind is, the Happy Startup School obviously was a side project, a side hustle, whatever you call it. But we started it very much as I hate the term, passion project. It was a passion project, because we did it because we wanted to do it and we needed to do it. It was an obsession more than an actual business opportunity. But I've been reading lately about how Basecamp first got started. So Basecamp, for those of you who don't know, project management tool, when they built the first version of their software, they were a web design agency like we were, and they built this on the side to satisfy their own need of a tool to make projects run easier. And actually they had very tough constraints of they had 10 hours a week to build this thing, and so it was a side project essentially. But what that did do was give them clarity when they went back to it to know, okay, what's really important, how can we prune out things that aren't relevant, and actually those constraints can help with the decision-making process and just get rid of anything that's not really key. And so I'd say that using it as a positive, not a negative, what are the constraints you have, and is that time, in which case how can you get the most of that time by being really effective with it. And also then, because you're working on different businesses, you might come back to it with a new sense of clarity that you didn't otherwise have, because you've got time away from the day-to-day, which is obviously challenging when you're building a startup. You also mentioned about how to promote side projects. I think the other bit of it is how can you be really effective with that time and get the most bang for your buck in terms of awareness about that, because obviously it takes time to build an audience. So one thing we did, which was related to what you said about building communities from day one, was just put on a meetup group. So putting on meetups for us was a way to share what we were trying to do, share our vision for the movement, but also to meet people and chat about their concerns and their challenges, and then slowly building this tribe together. And so that for us was a great way to not only build support, but also to get feedback about what this could look like as a business too.
I think another thing to mention is the Happy Startup School had its own brand and image in a sense. It didn't really relate too much to our original business, Spook Studio. Mm-hmm. So that was one way of doing it. That's the way we did it. We found that we didn't want it to look like a business scheme that's running out of Spook Studio. It was much more to do with, this is an idea we have and it should stand on its own legs. So there is some kind of benefit, and then whether that idea is going to live or die based on its own merit, rather than it being piggybacking on the original brand. Yeah,
cool.
Okay, so next one we're going to look at is Zach. I came up with an awesome new app idea 5 years ago. Got as far as creating a UI and mock-up, then stopped due to my own limitations. He says one limitation. Should I just throw in the towel and work on something new?
So my question would be, where did those 5 years go, Zach? Maybe that's another webinar. We hear this a lot. We're guilty of it ourselves, where you have an idea for a product, maybe you take some first step, but then for some reason, whatever that reason is, it just sits there dormant, maybe doesn't come to see the light of day. I think the one thing I would say is, would it hurt to kill it now, or do you want to give it a go? And if you think that it's worth giving a go, then what's the first step you can take to validate that and make sure that you don't throw money and time at it when actually there's no value to it. Is it still relevant 5 years on, would be my question. Does the problem still exist that you're trying to solve? Are there other alternatives out there that weren't there 5 years ago? Because 5 years in the startup world is like a lifetime. It's like 50 years. So I would be curious to know, is it still relevant, and do you feel like you're the best person to deliver this? And if so, what can you do to at least test it out and put it out there?
Yeah, I think following where your energy is, and if for some reason your energy hasn't been on this app idea over the past 5 years, that could be a signal. I think the other interesting thing is and we hear this a lot when people come up to us when saying, I have this app idea. There's always an app rather than actually there's this problem I want to solve. I think related to what Lawrence was saying in terms of, is the problem still relevant, is can you articulate this thing as a problem you want to solve rather than as a beautiful app with certain features? Because that can sometimes be a red herring when you're trying to think about whether you should continue or not. Yeah,
I think, like you said, trying to break it down into, don't start with the solution, I would say. And yeah, I think the other thing is looking at it as an experiment. So I think one of the challenges we see people face as they come onto any startup program, whether it's ours or an accelerator, is they really see it as, this is a business. I'm building a business, a company. There's a lot of red tape and hard work ahead. Whereas I think you should just look at it as just running some experiments, just looking at this thing you've got, this idea you've got, and just saying, what's the experiment I can run that can help me decide whether to go to the next stage, and then decide, is it worth building a company and hiring and asking for funding? But right now it's just an idea. Until I actually share it with the world, it's meaningless. So I would just say try and validate it soon.
Own the idea, really get to know it, but don't get owned by it, because a lot of the time people get too precious about their idea. And like Lauren says, the experiment mindset is not to be too emotionally attached to it, because what you want to see, you want to kill it quickly if it isn't a good idea, and then move on to the next one. Because I'm sure you've got loads of ideas in your head if you had the passion and energy to start that thing in the first place.
Yeah, but just don't be one of those people that every time a new startup comes out saying, I wish I'd have done that. I thought of that 5 years ago.
Yeah. I hope your idea wasn't Instagram.
But I think there's a great Derek Sivers talk where he talks about a formula between idea and execution. And I think it's about something like, if you've got an amazing idea and it's either not been executed at all, i.e. you haven't taken the first step, or you've taken a very small risk, then it's meaningless. It's worth nothing to any investor or anyone. So you can have an average idea, but it's well executed, that can actually supersede any great idea that hasn't been brought to life yet. So just bear that in mind.
Yeah, we want you to have a habit of executing.
Yes.
And not in the killing people sense.
Flex your action muscles.
Hey, right, write that one. Get a tattoo of that one. Cool, next one. Megan.
Yeah.
She says, I'm a 24-year-old with ideas, but zero confidence. How do I go about changing this and really transforming my mindset into that of an happy startuppreneur? That's a new one.
That's a new one.
Excellent. Actually, kind of follows on from what we were talking about just now, is really getting in the habit of doing things and making things and experimenting with ideas, not being too hung up on whether something's going to fail or not. Because if you build up your expectation that something has to be a success first time round, that's really going to knock your confidence, and you're not going to want to take that first step at all. I don't know if you have anything on that, Lawrence.
Yeah, I think there's, mindset's important. So I think it's, we talk a bit about mindset and homeschool, getting people to understand what it takes mentally to be an entrepreneur in terms of how you view the world. But also, like Carla said, it's about habits. It's about creating entrepreneurial habits, and just sort of having information or thinking differently doesn't actually change behavior. Doing stuff does. So like Carla said, just starting small and just getting in the mode of trying out new things every day, putting yourself out there, getting uncomfortable by talking to customers, sharing your idea with people. Some people are really comfortable with that, but generally a lot of people we meet who come through homeschool don't have the confidence to tell people about the idea. Never mind stand up in front of the stage and shout about it to investors or to other other people in the startup world. So I think it takes a lot of guts, but by edging towards it, by doing small things like talking in front of a few people, or just talking to friends and family first, whatever it takes to move you closer towards that goal of, not just being in the mindset of, but living and experiencing what it takes to be entrepreneurial and have lots of behaviors in your toolkit. So yeah, it's very much about not seeing it as a bigger goal, but much smaller goals on the way to it.
Cool. Right. I think we're going to be going on for longer than half an hour. So those of you on the call, please hit tight. We've got a few more questions we want to rattle through. And also I saw some questions come live through the Hangout. So should we move on to the next one?
Yeah, I think so. And bear in mind, people will be able to watch this on playback as well.
Yeah, so yeah, we'll be sharing the link to the recorded version so you can catch up with all the answers later on if you don't have time now. I think it's Rogerio. I have an idea and motivation, but how do I find partners in other areas to join me? My friends and network are most related to my professional area of interest. So I assume the friends are within the industry he works in at the moment. How do I find a publisher, webmaster, economist, and other people necessary to start? So essentially it sounds like, how can I build a network of supporters, I assume, and maybe collaborators?
Yeah, exactly. And it's also being aware of what is important right now. What are the resources and skills that you need right now, not thinking 6 months ahead, a year ahead. I think a lot of people make the mistake of trying to, solve problems that don't exist yet. I think it's really understanding what are the things you need now, who are the people you need now, and how can you find those people, rather than thinking of this team that you want to build or advisory board that you want to build, when actually maybe the fundamental idea you've got needs to be validated first.
I think also be able to, you have an idea, how clearly can you state that idea? How can you make that vision of the future that you want to create with this idea really tangible and people can get on board with and relate to? Because you want to be able to tell a story about your idea that people get and the right people get. So it isn't so much, you can either go down the route of I need a publisher and then have that relationship just based on how much money will you pay that publisher, or it's based on I have this dream that I want to accomplish, and you meet a publisher and what you do, you sell them the dream rather than the transaction. And then that way, hopefully you'll get the right people on board. And also anyone you meet who really understands your story and the vision you're trying to create, they'll act as your network and they might be able to suggest people who, will suit exactly what you need to do at that time.
Yeah, so I'd say a couple of places to start. I mean, the Canvas, our Happy Startup Canvas, there's a post on our blog or on Medium where we share the Canvas, and that helps people break their idea down into more detail. So getting away from just, a one-word answer to actually what are the fundamental pillars that help to communicate this idea to people. Like you said, the vision, the story, the problems you're solving. Those are the things that will help you to get support for what you're doing. But there's also the community too. So I think the one thing we've built, as we said, is the connections that we have within the community. So we've got developers, designers, project managers, investors, all sorts of people who are part of this startup ecosystem that are otherwise hard to get. And for us, it's finding people that align with your mission and believe in what you're trying to do. And that's a lot easier when you've got people who believe in the same things together. So yeah, as part of Homeschool, you'll meet other people, and who knows, we've had people who came on Homeschool who ended up collaborating on a business together, who they started off with completely different ideas, but ended up meeting and then sort of finding some common ground. So I try to be open to serendipity, but definitely have a clear idea of what you want at the beginning, and then just start finding the right environments where you think the people that you want to work with will be hanging out.
Cool. Next question is from Irene. She says, I would like to know what will be the best formation of a startup team. How many co-founders would be the best scenario? Best scenario, say 2, some say 3. So essentially, what's the best size for a startup, Lawrence?
I'd say it's less about how many people. I would say it's more about what are the skills you need. I mean, I definitely think I would definitely recommend people have a co-founder. We've been business partners for a long time. We were friends before that. Most accelerators and incubators won't accept single founders for a good reason, because the failure rate is a lot higher. partly because I'm sure you'd probably go mad if you didn't have that sounding board for ideas, you know, shoulder to cry on when things are going badly, someone to get excited when things go well. So yeah, I think it's important to find a co-founder, but at the same time, it's also a challenge because it's like dating. You know, you might never find Mr. Right or Mrs. Right. So how do you move forward without that being a bottleneck? So I think it was like, I would say try and have that in mind, that you really want to partner with someone because it will be a lot easier, and you want complementary skills too, because chances are one of you's got, you know, strengths in one area and you really want someone to balance that with. So I would say try and find a balanced team. That's my advice. Whether that's 2 people, 3 people, 1 person if you're, you know, amazing and bizarre and unusual. But yeah, really it's finding people with complementary skills who can actually help each other, rather than just one single-minded founder who's gonna, you know, find it difficult to move forward without that.
Yeah, I think the whole dating analogy is quite interesting, because it's hard to find someone who's going to hard to find someone who you can get on with if you don't know what you want yourself. You know, if you don't know yourself enough as to what you want and what drives you, then it's going to be hard to see whether anyone you're going to work with can fit into your personality. So what I'm trying to get at is really there's a certain level of internal searching as well you need to do before you just, you know, go out there and say, oh, I need a co-founder, because you need to be able to work out, actually, does what they want align with what I want? Otherwise, it would be, like we said before, when it comes to decision making and moving forward, it becomes a lot more difficult.
Yeah, and I think just a simple strategy for that would just be sharing your journey, you know, just blogging about it, you know, warts and all about the journey you're on with the startup. And then who knows, people might discover that and then want to help you on that journey. But I think it's being very clear about the help you need, and, you know, without telling people about what you're doing, then no one's going to find you. So yeah, being comfortable, being honest and open at the beginning, I think would help. Connect,
don't protect those ideas.
There you go.
There we go. That's another soundbite for you. Right, next one. Nora. She says, I want to structure my idea, then launch it. There's no specific question there, but I assume this is a need that she has. So this kind of relates to what we try and do with this homeschool, isn't it, Lawrence?
Yeah, I think it, like we said, it's trying to break down the idea in inverted commas into more detail. So having a structure for that and some guide ropes to be able to bring your idea out into the world, and that's what we try and provide through homeschool. And the other stuff we do is giving people a structured learning program, and then giving them guidance in terms of what does launching mean. You know, is launching the real thing? Is it a smaller version of it? Is it a prototype? Is it something completely different that actually will help to validate the idea without being the full thing too? So I think, yeah, trying to get away from the idea of a big launch and looking at it as a big all bells and whistles approach to actually how can I just break my idea down into more detail and then start to experiment and test out ideas with the real world and whatever form that looks like.
Yeah, from our work, you know, as a startup studio, what we're trying to do is provide a way for you to stop going round and round in circles. It's a standard thing. There's so many decisions you're going to make, so many opportunities. You can get easily distracted. And so the part of homeschool's sort of reason behind it is really to give you a more solid foundation from which to launch your idea. So really some key sort of cornerstones to what you're trying to achieve, and also looking at what your needs are and what is it that you want to get out of this business, rather than just how can you sell to as many people as possible. So yeah, there are tools, there are techniques, not only just about the business, but also about knowing about what your own motivations are, that will help you structure, I think, a better foundation for launching an idea.
Yeah, and I think some of the challenges we set are what get people thinking and get people excited. So I think the challenges we set are really ways for people to break down their idea into more detail and start to get feedback from the other people in the group. And that's the key thing, is that safe environment where people then are able to feel more comfortable going outside that once they've had some feedback from a small group of people that they actually trust.
Yeah, the regular startup thing is, you know, what problems are you going to solve? Are you trying to solve? Who are you trying to solve them for? How well do you know these customers? How big is the market? And there's things that we can touch on. There's lots of material out there. But what we'll try and do is give you a way of navigating. There's so much stuff out there. Hopefully a simple way to navigate all of that stuff so that you can make some progress without getting too bogged down in detail. Right. Next question is Tika. I'm a visual designer and I'm not happy with the work that I get. I am a freelancer. I would like to completely change and do something completely different. I don't really know what. Will your Happy Startup course guide me, or is it just for digital startups? There you go, Lawrence, sales pitch time.
Well, I think, yeah, less the sales pitch, more just the practical stuff, really. I mean, we do get a lot of freelancers and individuals who are maybe self-employed already, but not working on a startup. And in answer to your question, we don't just work with digital startups, even though that's our background. You know, we have people from all sorts of different businesses and organizations in our community, everything from charities, social enterprises, consultants who work with big companies. You know, it's really about the ethos we bring to the table and, you know, what attracts people to that. In terms of your situation, trying to do something different, what we can guarantee is that you'll come out of it feeling inspired, feeling empowered by some of the tools that we put out there. And, you know, some of them are digital, and, you know, I think our expertise allows us to find the best in breed in terms of technology for you to, you know, whether your business is online or offline, there'll be some element that touches digital in some way. And so a lot of the tools we share are actually time-saving tools for you to be able to run your life and business better. I think the one thing we can't guarantee is that you'll come out with that killer idea or come out with, you know, a guarantee of success. What it does do is just ask the right questions for you to be able to, you know, move forward on your journey with a bit more confidence and a bit more belief in terms of what are the things that are important to you, and hopefully finding people that you can really connect with that give you confidence in yourself and your ideas as well.
Clarity and focus. Those are kind of the main things that people get out of doing the homeschool. Really kind of narrowing down the myriad of opportunities and the sort of closing off those dead ends to just really think about, you know, what is the thing that I should be working on now and where do I want to really go? That's what we want to try and help you with.
Yeah.
Kind of relates to the next question from, I'm really going to struggle to pronounce this name. I'm really sorry.
Should we call him Olu?
Olu. Olu. Oh, sorry. Olu. Olu, I want to start a business, but I don't know the idea to work on. How do I identify an idea? So homeschool, you don't have to come with an idea. Hopefully we can help you work out where those ideas come from. What do you say, Lawrence, to that?
It's a common predicament for people, I think, is, you know, how do I identify an idea? And there's lots of ways of doing it. You know, we tell people to, you know, find things that annoy them. You know, what are things that frustrate you about your day-to-day life that you come across that could be solved in some way through, you know, a solution. Those are obvious places to start, you know, scratching your own itch. A lot of great products and services have come about from that. We also talk a bit about ways to be creative, you know, ways to spark those ideas. You know, what we can't guarantee is that you will find the idea, but what we can do is give you some frameworks and ways to get creative and unlock some ideas that might already be within you. And that's various things from getting outdoors, you know, exposing yourself to new situations, and also just being around people that inspire you, you know, by having conversations and hearing stories. Often that can trigger something in you, which then leads to something that you otherwise might not have found. So for me, it's like you said, it's the connections in the community which really help to unlock that, as well as some of the content we share, which might be a talk or an article, which might give you something more than you've got at the moment.
Yeah, a simple way to look at it: don't look for ideas, look for problems to solve. And that's, you know, that usually is a simple starting point, and then just keeping your eyes open to all sorts of opportunities.
Yeah, and I think there's a great place by, is it Mark Manson? He writes well about business and life a lot. And he just said, don't try and think about this killer idea, or don't think about this lifelong purpose of what I should be doing. Just focus on today. You know, what excites you today? Do I want to do this today? And by doing stuff that you find rewarding, passionate about, then I think that will lead you on the path to more purposeful ideas with purpose, new IP.
Excellent. Cool. Well, last question, and then we
can wrap up.
There's a couple of questions maybe that we want to have a quick look at that came through the webinar. So this last question is from Ashraful. I don't have a website. I know I need to do many things before that, but where do I start? What do I need to do when? Any easy step-by-step guide? So is there a step-by-step guide on how to get started, Lawrence?
Well, I think, I don't know if he's just talking about the website specifically. I mean, we do talk about that, but I think with any of these things, really, it's partly some of the tools we share, so we can share tools that we've used to build websites quickly. I think with anything like this, whether it's starting a business or launching a website or an app or anything, it's speed is key. I think if you can get your ideas out there quickly, it might not be the best solution, the best technology, but if you can launch something minimum lovable, as we talk about a lot, something that is, you know, small, the first small step, but something that actually has an experience that people find useful and delightful, then that's going to help you understand what are the things that you need to do quicker. So yeah, I would say through the tools we share, some of the frameworks we provide through the Canvas and the homeschool, you'll definitely be able to, you know where to go.
Cool. Okay. Well, should we try and answer a couple of questions that came through the live feed, and then we'll go on and just wrap up.
Yeah.
Okay. There's a quick one here from Andy. Good old Andy. He's on Tribe 7 at the moment. If you ever read anything about how to become a freelancer, the first statement is always you need a minimum of 4K in the bank from day one. How much should you have for starting a business? How much money is enough? We talk about this on the homeschool a bit in terms of you kind of define a runway, and the simple way is, you know, what is your budget? How much money do you spend a month? How much can you trim that down to, and then define how many months you think you need to get the idea off the ground, and that's usually between 6 to 12 months at least to start off with. What would you say to that, Lawrence?
Yeah, I think it's about, like you said, what costs can you trim as well? So do you have any, are there any sacrifices you want to make on the lifestyle you currently have? I know a lot of people who might go into business in later life who've already got some of the, you know, luxuries that otherwise they might not have had. And so then it's hard to lose those when you become a startup and you're bootstrapping and hustling. So I think about what costs can you trim? You know, what's your runway look like you said? How long do you need, you know, before you need to get funds? And also, can you supplement that with other income in the meantime? So rather than this being a full-time gig, I think like Andy said, can you maybe do some freelance work whilst having a pot of money? So I mean, we've had various people come through homeschool, and actually that we've worked with at Spook, who were part-time. So they maybe went down to 3 days a week in their main job, whether it's freelance or full-time, freelance or permanent, and then using the other 2 days or maybe in the whole weekend if they were really keen to then build their startup on the side. And then, like we talked about, then deciding, okay, is this worth pursuing as a full-time gig? But what it does do in the short term, it gives you a bit more of a buffer. So I think with anything like this, you just need to be prudent and make sure that you're not burning money and you've got something in the bank to be able to survive on. So what is your runway, really?
Cool.
Yeah. So sorry, just quickly, that would be different for different people.
All right, another maybe a couple of questions here. So this is Dan Flanagan. He's asked, I started a business 4 years ago and had to shelve it due to financial restraints. I have now restarted it in a more defined status. How do I convince my nearest and dearest that I'm doing the right thing and not making the same mistakes again? So how do you convince your wife that you're doing the right thing, Lawrence?
Is this turning into like a marriage counselling session? I think this is a real challenge though, isn't it? For anyone building a business, you know, often people, like I said, their loved ones or their family, they don't really understand what it takes. So particularly if people are unhappy, you know, if you've got a well-paid job, you're doing something that pays the bills and brings home the bacon, so to speak, then, you know, stepping out of that by taking a salary cut or even taking a full, you know, drop in income is scary. And particularly if you're trying something new that is risky and uncertain. So I would say there's no simple answer to that. I think it's just about surrounding yourself with people outside that who you can feel are your tribe, who actually, you know, give you confidence to manage those situations better. But
I think, yeah.
I'd like to hear your take.
Yeah. Well, I think one thing is, are you passionate about your idea? Because if you really are really passionate about it and you can show that, then that's going to make people feel like, okay, he's serious. It's not going to be something that they're just going to give up on further down the line. The other thing, you know, talking to what we've done is we didn't just suddenly quit and start a new business. We tested the idea. It grew slowly out of a curiosity rather than, all right, this is how we're going to make money. But what we've done over the time is we found that there are ways, there are revenue models, there are customers out there, there are people who believe in what we're doing, there is a market for what we do. And that, showing to whether it's friends or family or an investor, ultimately they want to show that there's actually people who want to pay for the service that you're providing. So if you can do that in a small way at the beginning and slowly build that up and not have to ditch everything at the start, that's the way of building some confidence, I hope, in the people around you.
Maybe you need to create like a family pitch deck that we can create, like template.
Yeah, you could do a SWOT analysis of why you should start a business. But seriously, and part of that isn't just about the money, it's about your mental health.
Yeah.
Because maybe staying in the job that you're doing at the moment is probably not going to be good for your family in the long term.
But it's actually good practice, because you're going to find a lot of people who are naysayers who aren't, that interested in your idea. And so actually trying to pitch it and sell it to close loved ones is part of that challenge. And, co-founders, investors, customers are going to be a lot harder, I would imagine. So yeah, it's a good practice to get out there and just start hustling.
Cool. Okay. So should we close this off now?
Yeah. Sorry, we run a little bit over.
Yeah. So hopefully we've managed to answer your questions as well as we can. One of the reasons that we run Homeschool, we created Homeschool, is we came across these questions time and time again, not just about how to build a business, but why should I start a business in the first place? And we've, over our time, just reading up countless books, watching countless videos and podcasts, we really got to know what are the really useful bits of information out there. And we're trying to, the Homeschool is our way of curating all of that information and that content into a structure that's going to be a bit more easily accessible and stop people drowning in that noise of startup world and happiness and lots of conflicting information that's coming left, right, and center. And so hopefully, hearing from what we talked about today, you can kind of trust a bit of our judgment and get what we do. If you don't, fair enough. But the Homeschool is our kind of knowledge packaged into one thing. And we're trying to, we've come across so many tools and techniques that have helped us build a happy startup school and also build other people's businesses. And, we want to share that in a simple way, in a structured way, so that you can do it yourself. And ultimately what we found, it isn't, you can read as much as you want and you can have the best software and technology at your fingertips. But if you're not connected to the right people who are going to give you the energy and the enthusiasm to move on and push your idea forward, and also kick up the backside a lot of the time to actually get going and doing something, whether it's going to be success or not, for us, doing is better than just dreaming. So for us, that's really kind of the reason why anyone would take the Homeschool. Take that first step and don't regret it because you never tried. I don't know if you want to add on to that, Lawrence.
Yeah, I think it's for us, we see it as a long-term relationship with people. It's not just about a one-off course. For a lot of people, it's just their sort of apprenticeship in being part of this community. Coming on board, then uncovering relationships and connections they otherwise wouldn't have had, coming to our events, being part of it from afar sometimes if people are overseas, but feeling connected to something bigger than themselves, I think is what we're excited by. So don't see it as a 4-week course, but rather an investment in your relationships and the start of a new journey with us and like-minded people who actually are trying to do something good in the world, and being surrounded by people who are doing the same is quite enriching. Cool.
So yeah, if you are stuck and you want to get started, you don't know where to go next, you really want to build a business that you believe in and you never want to sell, and you want to actually join a global group of like-minded people, then the first step I would suggest is join the Homeschool. And we've Tribe 8 will be kicking off next week. Up until the end of tomorrow, we've given you a discount on the course. So go to the homepage for the AMA and you'll see a button at the bottom to pay for, basically to claim that discount. You'll get nearly 40% off the full price. And yeah, we hope, we want to share our knowledge with as many people as possible. And like Lawrence said, this is the first step. And we have a whole community of people out there who are trying to push each other forward and build more purpose-driven businesses. So yeah, well, take care. Have a good rest of the week. Hopefully you manage to stay with us for the length of the webinar. If not, like we said before, we've got this recorded and we will be sharing the sort of video with you over the next day. So do you want to say goodbye, Lawrence?
No, just thanks to everyone for listening and putting up with us. And yeah, sorry I couldn't be in the studio, but yeah, going forward, we look forward to either meeting you online or hopefully at one of our events soon.
Cool. And sorry if we missed your question. We only had a limited period of time. There's quite a few questions that came through. Thank you, Toby. Lots of really good questions. Unfortunately, not be able to tackle them now. And yeah, Alice as well. Sorry to you and Johnny that we didn't get around to answering those. So yeah, take care. Have a good week. And yeah, talk to you soon. We'll be doing some more of these webinars in the future. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Okay.